Okay, hello and welcome. This is the third show of my new weekly show, and this one is going to be on TVP timings. First of all, just like to say I think 7:30 GMT in general sort of works better for me. Just 12 on a Saturday is not always a good way to guarantee that people are going to be there, so I think I'm going to switch it to 7:30 on a Monday evening, which is 8:30 Central European Time. But anyway, TVP timings. Now, it's a very... Let me just get my hair out of the way. It's a very broad, generic topic, and there's literally no possible way that I can cover all of it, like, at all. So I'm not going to be going through, Terran goes this build, Protoss goes this build, these are the timings, blah 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 blah. That's stuff that you can mechanically look up. What I'm going to be doing is sort of building a roadmap of how you can, in principle, for any matchup, work out when a certain race has a particular advantage, and that advantage can be anything. When a race is expected to be able to, say, assert map control, or when a race can go on the offensive, when they can hit timing attacks, and not going into sort of very generic timings of sort of trivial example, it's better to push 15 seconds before your opponent's +2/+2 finishes than 15 seconds afterwards. Oh yes, I did shave. I had to submit a photo for PhD applications, and I didn't want to be like, I'm a hermit. So I decided to sort of leave myself up. But anyway, what I would most like to do is just sort of think about things, think about standard PvT play, TVP play. I'm mostly going to be doing this from the Terran perspective, since it was introduced from the Terran perspective. Just sort of think about general timings and generally what happens. Well, let's go to my screen here, because I've got MS Paint up, and this is going to be amazing. When you think in the very, very, very early game, I'm going to be using red for Protoss and blue for Terran. Toss and Terran. If you can read that, you deserve a medal. But okay, so if we just sort of construct a timeline, let's just go with a timeline. So here we have a nice almost straight line, 0 minutes, late game, just roughly saying. If we just begin thinking about what sort of units that a Protoss is going to have out, and I mean, again, we're going to be, oh, why did I want that to be, change that back to black, Control Z, bugger. There we go. Forgive my retardation. Okay. When the initial... This was a bad idea. This was a terrible idea. But anyway, when the initial units come out, your first sort of Zealot, Stalker, Marine, Marauder type thing, believe it or not, the Protoss actually has the advantage. And if you just think about that, a Stalker can micro against Infinity Marines and deal decent damage. There's nothing at the very, very early game to prevent Stalker from just completely destroying Marines. Then Zealots completely destroy Marauders, and Zealots run at the same speed as both Marauders and Marines, so the Stalkers can run away from both and pick off pot shots. The Marauders have to run from the Zealots, and the Zealots can run from the Marines. So basically the Protoss has this advantage really, really when the first units come onto the field. So if we just say, give a nice blob here, I want a thicker brush, give a nice blob here that the Protoss dominates in the early game. And again, I'm going to be looking at sort of a fairly standard play. Terran's going to be going Marine Marauders. Protoss is going to be going some sort of gateway army into late game AoE tech, just as a blanket term, because really there's not much difference in how the timings work out for Colossus versus High Templar. Although if you've seen any of my stuff before, you'll know that I hate mid-game Colossus. Then the first thing that comes out is concussive shells, and that immediately takes it away from the Protoss. So if we just write here, let's not make it so big, let's make it about 12, and I don't know if you can see that at all, but anyway, conch shells. Okay, concussive shells come out, and what this means is that Stalkers can no longer hit Marauders because they will get slowed to death and killed. Zealots can no longer catch Marauders because they get slowed to death and get killed. And very quickly you get this very, 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 very rapid shift over to sort of Terran being in control of the matchup, as it were. So Terran sort of hits with concussive shells, and suddenly the Terran is strong, and it's the Protoss that has to sit there, they're quaking in their boots, and you see this time and time again in the matchup. The initial Zealot and the Stalker will go out across the map and just completely bully the Terran off the map, and maybe even poke into the Terran's base, and they'll often punish a greedy Terran that way. Concussive shells finishes, and the Stalkers just run back to their main, because they might sort of poke about at the front and stay there, but they know that they're dead if a Marauder ever gets a hit on them. So then Terran begins to feel sort of very, 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 very safe in control. Then you get a timing that sort of is not always used, but it does exist, where, let's fill in some more blue there just so I have more space to write this. Okay, so concussive shell takes over. And then notice how I'm not using specific timings here, I'm just wanting a general feel for the matchups so that we can then analyze some replays in this context. Okay, so then we have a Protoss timing window of roughly here. We've got color back to black. We've got war date. Now this is not always used, but it is there. It is definitely there. MC's 5-gate timings, 7-gate timings, sort of the Protoss, even something like a 3-gate expand. Once warp gate finishes, Protoss suddenly has this big surge of units, and they can exploit that timing to use them to their advantage, and basically overcome the small unit advantage that concussive shells brings. I suppose I could be doing with this with 2D mix so that you get the gestures. No, that covers everything. Never mind. Oh, that's not what I want. That's what I want. Okay, but nonetheless it is there. Protoss feels, once warp gate's done, they feel safe. They feel absolutely good. They can even begin to do some pressures, but for the most part, Terran's not going to be tacking into a Protoss once warp gate is done, because, well, it's generally suicide. So, then some major timings start to happen. Well, once Stim and perhaps Combat Shield as well is done, Terran completely just takes over the map, and you will see the Protoss army sat outside as natural, because if you engage a Terran stimmed army, you had damn sure better win that fight, because if you don't, you lose your entire army and possibly the game. So the only time a Protoss is going to be moving out against a Terran with Stim is when he's got an army that he thinks he can take the Terran on directly. And let me tell you, a gateway army with no upgrades or anything like that is not going to do the job. So, Stim. Stim. Let's get that in black, because I told you black. Color 1 is black. Why are you typing in blue? Defeated by paint. Oh well, it'll be a blue Stim. Okay, so Stim gets done. This can include Stim and combat shields and all that sort of thing. And you get a lot of Terran timing windows in this range where they push in with Stim. The 50 food push, very, very, very old school from the beta, something the Protoss has just had to learn to fend off. Very, 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 very good timing where the Terran army definitely has dominance. And then you sort of have something weird that I am going to represent like this. Like so. Where it all just becomes a bit messy, and then late game it's more sort of like this. Now I've done this thing like this because this is where you start to sort of match up the Protoss. So say, just as a generic, Colossus versus Medevac. Now, the reason I've phrased it like that is, if you are a Terran going against a Protoss who's got his late game AoE out, and you don't have Medevacs, well, it's a scary position for you. Similar thing for Protoss. Similar thing for Protoss. If a Terran player has Medevacs out, well, okay, they generally get Medevacs out before you have any sort of late-game AoE, but you certainly can't attack them, and there are some very sort of frightening attacks that you can have against you. So very, very, very simple picture. Anyone can do this for any matchup. You can just, begin thinking about this. Well, look at the standard play of the matchup, and look when the typical upgrades happen. And you can even look at just who has the most presence on the map. So for Zerg, it would be, say, Zerg versus Terran. Well, early game, the Zerg are kind of afraid and sort of hankering down. Then Speed finishes and Speedlings take over the map. Then, say, Hellions come out and the Hellions take over the map. And then Mutalisks come out and Mutalisks take over the map. And then the Terran push with tanks and Marines comes, and it continues in a very standard fashion. You can just sort of build this timeline. And that's going to be crucial when we analyze the game. This is actually going to be the main focus of everything that I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to analyze some replays. Let's do it on camera so that I can get into this without revealing how long the game goes on. Hang on. So what I wanted was this one, first of all. Replay loading up, 30 seconds of me looking like a dickhead. Actually, I do, when I'm shaved and my hair is back like that, it kind of... I'm going to say I look like a very, very... I would say pedophile, but I'm too afraid to say that. I look disturbing. Jesus. I look like Jesus. No. But, in any way, filler is now approximately over. It's stuck on 99%. I just want to get on with the show so I can get over this awkward moment, but it's stuck on 99%. Okay. So, here we are in the show. Now, big shock horror. This is a TVP. Bigger shock horror, the Protoss is going to win this. I'm presenting this entire show from the Terran perspective, but the Protoss is going to win this. And I specifically chose this first because, well, actually, when you're looking at how you can exploit timings in a matchup, when you're thinking about, well, what's a good timing attack to hit, or when should I be afraid of the Protoss doing something to me, you get far more information from just analysing a loss. In general, you get far more information from analysing a loss from the race that you want to improve on. Because you can sort of say, well, hey, yeah, no, this didn't work out. I need to do this different. I should get my webcam zoomed out so you can see my awesome hand gestures. Because that's really quite high. Maybe if I pointed at my chest, then, no, that doesn't work anyway. But, anyway. So, we're going to have MVP versus MC. Classic. And this should already tell you sort of what the timings that I'm going to be looking at are, because MC has a very distinctive style in this matchup, if you followed him much. I'm not quite sure where this was from, this replay actually, but it is on an MLG map, so it might have actually been played in MLG. But anyway, we're going to have, again, absolutely standard for the matchup. MC is going to be going for a 1-gate FE, and MVP is going to be going for a gasless expand. Again, not interested in the specific builds, wanting to build up a general sense of the timings, because that's what's important, and that way you can adapt it to any build of your own in this matchup. Again, not so much mech, because mech tends to be a different beast altogether. You sort of, yeah, when you go mech, you're forcing the matchup down a path that has very, 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 very different timings, and generally mech tends to be just a head-on whoever has most stuff. You can't rely on stim to carry you through, kind of thing. You just have to have a lot of it to deal with it. So we're going to have MVP taking his expand. Now notice he gets 2 Marines out and throws down a bunker. Now this is absolutely crucial. This is the main thing that I want to focus on from this matchup, because believe it or not, this bunker is just an absolute guarantee. Remember how we said that in the early game, the Protoss and Protoss has the advantage? This bunker is a reflection of that. It's an absolute reflection of that. And Protossers out there, you can get so many free wins just by your first Stalker and your first Zealot come out, move them across the map. If your opponent hasn't bunkered up, you win the game then and there. You honestly win the game then and there. Terran players, do not skip this bunker. This bunker is allowing you, this is what's, it's a fact of the matchup. It is just pure fact that when the first few units are out on the field, the Protoss has the advantage in this case. Unless you've gone for a really ridiculously early concussive shell, Protoss is going to be able to bully you around the map. So, if we don't want to get an early concussive shell, if we want to get this gasless expand up, well then we're going to have to deal with the fact that the Protoss has the advantage in some way. So it's not the fact that you have to get this bunker because the Protoss is going to beat you otherwise. It's the fact that this bunker is allowing you to not get concussive shell super early. It's allowing you to not get gas and to throw up your expansion earlier. And if that's what you want, then cool. But already you can see how we've got this diagram. We can just relate things, exactly what's going on, back to this diagram. And this is a diagram that I've done for basically every single matchup over the years in both Brood War and StarCraft 2. And this is something that you definitely can do. Very, 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 very just off the top of my head, just rough sort of, well, what becomes scary when, looking at how a general matchup is played out. And you can again, I mean, you can do one for, say, mech as well if you wanted, but generally you can cover the standard playstyles fairly comfortably. Now if we notice, MC has a Stalker and a Zealot up here. If this bunker wasn't here, well, 4 Marines versus a Stalker and a Zealot, they're just not going to win that fight. They're absolutely not going to win the fight, especially not with the second Stalker being rallied, and only 1 Marine being able to be produced at a time. So the fact that we've got the bunker, suddenly we're safe, suddenly we're allowed to do this, and this is something that every Protoss should do. They don't do it because they're afraid of concussive shell, but that's a fear that you have to get over. Particularly against a gasless expand, you know he's not going to have concussive shell for a long time. Just do whatever you can with these Stalkers. And Terrans, you just have to sort of play defensive until concussive shell is out. And we can see the bunker immediately means that the Stalker just turns around. So great, first timing covered. Now, the next timing that we're going to look at is, well, here we have a tech lab going out. Note that Marauders in themselves, even without concussive shell, do sort of mean that you can go head-to-head with a Protoss army, but Zealots tend to be a problem. And now, this is the second timing that I wanted to look at in this game. Notice how... oh, sorry, yeah. I forgot to turn my music down from gaming mode. Thank you for pointing that out. That should be a lot better. Notice how MVP has just completely skipped concussive shells. Completely skipped concussive shells. He's not getting them. So in this diagram, he's just neglected this area. There's nothing wrong with that. Protoss could potentially neglect Warp Gate, but that would be silly given that it's an upgrade that costs nothing and makes your gateways just far more useful, even if you're not using a Warp Gate timing. And remember when I constructed this, I said, think about the Warp Gate timing, sort of the 5, 6, 7 gate pushes. So even if you're not using that timing, you still generally want the upgrade, and he will eventually get concussive shells, but he's just completely skipping over this. What does that mean for the game? Well, for starters, it means that he can't really patrol the map, because if he does patrol the map, it's a good possibility that he will get caught out by some sentries, and his army will be cut off, and they'll just be ripped to shreds by Zealots. Zealots strong against everything that Terran has, as long as the Terran thing can't run away. So you know, fine, we've skipped this concussive shell upgrade, and that just means that we're going to have to play a bit more defensive. And so opting to get the stim first, just to rush through to that, well, I want stim earlier because then I've got this big powered sort of BAM moment. I'm not going to exploit this early concussive shell timing. And all of this is completely fine as long as you're sort of interpreting it in terms of this diagram. So he's going to go on, and we notice that he's thrown up a second bunker, and here's a third coming. It's at about 8 minutes mark, and if we look, let's just go back and find the moment that warp gate was done. When did MC finish his warp gate? It'll be quite a long time ago, actually. But in any case, we'll look for when these extra gateways got done. Okay, 3 gate pressure, we're fine with 2 bunkers. Now he can really have extra gateways coming on, and look at this. 6 gateways go up, so yes, MC is going to be doing a 6 gate timing push, and we're beginning to throw down more bunkers. Now that, exactly, this region is what we're looking at here. MVP is sort of saying, well, I don't have stim done yet, so my army's not really all that useful in direct up confrontation versus sentries, and he will have warp gate done, and he can be doing some sort of warp gate timing now. Well, if I don't have stim and he can have 6 gates warping in units at the front of my base, I guess I just better be safe, and I better be throwing up bunkers. And that's exactly what he's doing. Notice the missile turret, this is just to deflect any sort of DT play and maybe pick off a careless observer. That again is another timing that you could begin to look at, but that's a sort of weird timing. That's something that you're just going to have to look up and say, well, I guess I need detection by now. It doesn't really play into the overall strategies of the matchup. It's more a specific once-off kind of thing. So he's going to be throwing up these extra bunkers and throwing down these two supply depots just to form a wall, and very, very nice. Reduces the surface area that zealots can get on the bunkers. Always good. If we look at his vision, he knows basically nothing. He doesn't know at all what's coming. So this is not a, oh, I've scouted warp gate. I've scouted that he's going for a warp gate push. This is just a, well, until my stim is done, I better be safe. And this is a problem that Terran players have been having a lot against this sort of 5-6 gate. They'll try to stay on only 1 bunker. And being on only 1 bunker is great. It works if stim is done. But, well, if there's a possibility that he can be going for a warp gate push and we don't have stim, we better just make sure that he's not going to be able to break the front. And note that if you scout Colossus, say you throw it on a scan, you see a robo bay, facility and support bay, then you can begin thinking about cancelling these bunkers, because the Colossus, again, if we look at our diagram, they come much later. The earliest Colossus timing is around 11 minutes, just off the top of my head. And something I was originally going to do was just go through both races and just sort of play to see when we can get Colossus out and when we can get Methysc out. But there's probably not going to be time for it, and it's something that if you don't know, you can A, just look up, and B, you can just go and try both races and build up this diagram that way. But this was just off the top of my head, and this is knowledge that's freely available, so nothing too fancy there. And then he's throwing up a 4th bunker here, which is just incredibly awesome and incredibly just amazing, because these bunkers are going to get force field against a warp gate push. This bunker is kind of going to be something that you can fall back on when these bunkers fall. And he can't really force field those bunkers and then get force fields around this bunker, not without losing his sentries. So, yeah. We are going to basically just watch this battle now, and we'll see how it happens. Nice force field from MC, pretty much to be expected. We're sort of going okay. 2 bunkers going down, proxy pylon is going up, we'll have more warpings shortly. And MVP just sort of doing what he can to hold this off. But, as we'll shortly see, this timing from MC is just a little bit too strong. And yeah, accelerating on, he will eventually break through, and this is about the surprises, not going well. And MVP is going to lose this. Now, why is he going to lose this? We can get this up now. Why is he going to lose this if if everything we said, sort of the bunkers going up in the right positions at the right times, he seemed to be doing things very, 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 very well. And he still got taken out by this. And the reason being, essentially, is that MC hit at a spectacular timing. Rather than going back that way, let's just go back to when this timing was. I can now use the scroll bar. If we look at what MVP was doing here, around the 10-minute mark this push came, I believe. Yeah. Okay, so shortly after here, the push is going to be coming. 10 minutes on the dot, the push is at the front door. Now, Stim has just finished, so that's good. It means that our army is going to be strong. But we have these 3 racks that are sort of pumping out units, and we're trying to go for medevacs. Now, this is the most common thing in the world. This is the absolute most common thing in the world. This is standard Terran play. Absolutely, absolutely standard Terran play. This is how the Terran mid-game should feel against Protoss. 3 racks out, 2 bases, maybe a 3rd command center, something the Terrans have been doing a lot lately, and then medevacs. So MVP is trying to get to this stage of the thing, this stage of the game. If we just look at MC's base, well, he's not trying to get to this stage of the thing, of the game. He's here. He's right here. And I suppose that I should just not click and drag. This is where MC is, this sort of warp gate stim region. This is the timing attack he's trying to hit, whereas MVP is trying to play for this stage. And if we look at MVP's vision, well, he knows absolutely nothing about what MC's doing. Absolutely nothing. He did not know about this push until it happened. So while he's setting up safe for sort of a 2-base gateway push, he was not prepared for this all-in of MC. If we see MC cut probes at 40, and this was an all-in that just didn't get scouted. And so basically we can say that, well, if MVP had not been trying to, again, if we look back at this, MC is trying to force the game to end here. This is when MC sort of, let's draw a nice line because I like lines. That is where MC wants the game to end. And MVP is playing for things in sort of this region. Well, that's a very, very, very nice sort of beautiful way of understanding why he wasn't able to hold off this push. We've said that Protoss has a nice strong timing here that he exploited. Sure, Terran can push things late game and deal with things here, but if he's not prepared for this warp gate push, he's never going to get to that stage, and that's exactly what happened. So while he was prepared for warp gate timings of sort of the 4-5 gates, just I've got an expansion up, I'm going to go harass, MVP cutting probes at 40 and saying, I want the game to end now, well, he wasn't prepared for. And so we can immediately begin to think, well, how could we have overcome this? Well, maybe by not sort of rushing, let's go with the brush, maybe by not sort of rushing from here to here, or even you can argue that MVP was going from there to there. He sat in his base until he got medevacs out. By not doing that, maybe we could have held that. If we had instead focused on some sort of stim-based army, that would have been good. So delay our medevacs and get up to 4 racks. Definitely a good way to hold it. And you can immediately see this is a process you can apply to every matchup. You can understand this loss in terms of this diagram. It seems like MVP was doing everything perfect, but he was trying to get to here. Once the medevacs were out, sure, this would have been like, I really hope you develop an appreciation for just how amazing this timing was, because medevacs were on the way. In fact, by the time the game had ended, there were medevacs out and healing. And if the medevacs had been out now, there's just no ways this MC push would have worked. Absolutely no ways. But by trying to get to there, we've left ourselves vulnerable here. And so, what can we do next time? Well, we can maybe throw down another scan. Maybe try and see if he has got a robotics facility instead of just assuming he's got a robotics facility. Maybe try and see the 6 gates, although that's a very rare possibility. Maybe just get concussive shells out and use the advantage that gives us to patrol the map and try and sort of see for any pylons or this mass gateway unit. If we'd seen the mass gateway units here moving out, well, we'd have our suspicions. And so, yeah, that is sort of a very, very nice introductory overview to the timings in the maps, sort of exemplified by the sort of process that I want you to go about understanding not just this matchup, but all matchups. And so, if we look at our next replay, now we are going to, I think I've got 4 replays to do. I'll try and do them all. I don't know if I'll have time to do them all. Okay, so here we go. Into the next replay. We have Naniwa. I use Naniwa's replays a lot because love or hate the guy, and there's certainly a lot of grounds for hating him. You have to admire his play. He just has really, really, really amazingly crisp, clean builds, and it is actually quite beautiful to watch. And we're going to see him against Artist, who I unfortunately don't know as much about, which is a pity. But anyway, so the same framework. Think about this diagram the entire time during this replay. Just really, really, really focus on it. Okay, we're going to have Naniwa again going for a 1-gate FE, and Artist is going to get some sort of early expansion up, followed by going into the standard Marine Marauder play, the 3 racks plus Methysc. Very, 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 very typical stuff. And, okay, Naniwa actually went for a 16 Nexus. Don't particularly care about this. It's essentially just a rearrangement that gets you to the same sort of points. Notice that when this happens, Terran does have the minutest early timing that is the difference between the Marine attacking this Nexus and the first Zealot spawning, which is about 0.5 seconds, and not even worth considering. But it is there. You can do some sort of bunker shenanigans. But really, 60 Nexus on a map like this is pretty safe, assuming you cancel against a 3 racks or something similar. So, we then have basically identical expansion timings. Artist is a little bit behind because he got the orbital command, which basically means that their economy is going to be the same anyway. And we're going to see 3 racks going down, fairly standard timing. Naniwa, 1 gateway in core, fairly standard timing. And we'll see in a second, Artist throws down exactly the same bunker. It's got 2 Marines there, and bam, the bunker goes down. Exactly the same logic as before. We can begin to look at sort of things, well, this bunker is a lot later in absolute time than MVP's bunker. We can immediately understand that because, well, Nani went Nexus first, so that delays the timing slightly. He's not going to be pushing out with a Zealot as soon if he's gone for Nexus first. But the principle of the bunker is the same. Protoss army is scary at this point. As scary as an army of 2 units can be. So, just to be safe, this bunker's going up. Absolute necessity. You can lose so many games just by not having that bunker. This bunker is what is allowing us to get this expansion up nice and early. And now we see the gas going, and we see the tech lab going, and again we see this similar sort of thing, skipping straight over there to get to stim. Fine. We're okay with that. We don't necessarily want to take the map at this time, so we'll just get to stim and defend against warp gate timings in a more convenient fashion. Exactly the same sort of thing. Now, Nani doing the standard Protoss thing, throwing up 2 gateways, and doing the non-standard Protoss thing of going up to 6 gateways. So now this game is going to have a very, 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 very similar feel to the last game we looked at. Very, very, very similar feel. Artist doing exactly the same thing as MVP, throwing up these extra bunkers. Just a necessity. Now if we pause here and look at his vision, again, he knows nothing about this. So very, 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 very similar sort of circumstance. And sorry, excuse me, throat got a bit dry there. We now have Naniwa looking to make his push. Now, what you'll notice is that both this push comes a little bit earlier, little bit earlier, in a little bit less of an all-in fashion. He hasn't cut probes at all, and so this is more sort of the pressure of your warp gate timings rather than the all-ins, whereas in the last game we could have seen how big his army was at the 10-minute mark, and the fact that he had no robo and immediately assumed, oh, he's all-inning me. Now this is just sort of a very, very, very strong pressure timing. And if we scout this here, well, at the 8-minute mark, that's not a huge number of units. It just means that he's been powering off 3 gateways and is now going up to 6 gateways, which we can see with the scan. So he's not going to have a robotics facility, and he's counting on this push to deal some damage. So cool. Notice how the timing behind this push, again, just completely clean and crisply. Look how close to being done Stim is going. An artist is going to be going for the usual 3 racks into medevac play. And Naniwa is just going to poke, and probably do not too much more. We'll just have to see. And if I get the production tab, notice how he's still producing probes and is now getting the double gateway behind us. So if somehow we scan this or we get a probe and an SCV in there and we see this, we think, great. Forges tell me he's going late game oriented. He's therefore not going to try and all-in me now. I can continue with my standard play. I don't have to worry about defending against some sort of crazy all-in. And you can immediately tell that this is not really an all-in move, this is just a pressure move. And so, not much happens. Now I want you to notice how similar these two games were, how almost identical they appear, but how very, 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 very different the processes are. This was at the 8-minute mark. He got 6 gateways up and put on some pressure and saw the bunkers, knew that he couldn't break that, and backed off. In MC's case, it was he got 6 gateways up, cut probes, warped in masses and masses of units, and then pushed at the 10-minute mark. MC was trying to hit before medevacs came in, and he did that with a wonderful timing. Naniwa was trying to pressure before Stim came online, but seeing this good placement here, he's just going to concede that he can't do much. He's forced what he had to force, essentially, these bunkers. He's put on the pressure he needed to put on, and he's now continuing with his double forge and Twilight late game plan. Cool, perfect. Twilight Council going up. Notice that this could be a Robo Bay and he could be going for Colossus for all I cared. There's sort of fundamentally very little difference between how Templar play and Colossus play plays out, other than Colossus leaves a big gap in your defenses before range is done. We now have both players just happily sort of saying, cool. We no longer have a player saying, I want to end the game here. They're now both just saying, well, let's just skip to that stage. Whereas Naniwa, he did sort of there, maybe, okay, no, let's go there. And, cool. We've basically been able to interpret everything they've done in terms of these diagrams. But now what's interesting about this game is what happens from here. So we'll see Artist get the medevacs out, and he begins pumping 2 medevacs at a time. Once these 2 medevacs are done, I'm going to pause the game and I'm going to see, look at his vision. Okay, cool. He's seen 2 Forges and a Twilight Council. No Robo. 6 gates, 2 Forges, Twilight Council. No Robo. It's very, very unlikely that he'll have a Twilight Council and be going for Colossus. If he is, we'll just go in and kill him. He can't possibly support that. So we don't need to get some Vikings up desperately soon. So we can continue to produce medevacs. And as I say this, he's just content to sit on 2 medevacs, but he will produce more medevacs and then cancel them. Ah, you're making me look bad, artist, you're making me look bad. And now we see sort of this nice mid-game oriented thing. Okay, cool, we've got a Ghost Academy. So that's what he was spending his money on. And this Ghost Academy immediately makes sense. The medevacs are good in this time. Oh, where did my thingy go? Okay, so we're now in this stage of the game. And we've got our medevacs and our Colossus type play. In this case, it's medevacs and Templar. What's good against Templar Ghosts? What's good against Colossus Vikings? That changes. Really, that's just a rearrangement depending on what your opponent has done. But essentially, it's this medevac versus Colossus that is the interesting thing, because this is when the armies begin to be fairly evenly matched in a battle. So, we're going to have Naniwa going for a third, we're going to have Artist going for a third. Standard timing. Absolutely standard timing. This is just a fairly both players going for the most typical matchup you could possibly imagine, with the exception that you could possibly argue that Colossus are a bit more typical, but in any case. So Naniwa has his Templar archives out. He's not researching Storm quite yet, which I kind of like. Again, if we just look at this diagram, well, generally the medevacs tend to come out before we can have Storm or Colossi, so if we get some Archons first, that helps us keep us safe against the fact that, well, this should really look a little bit like this, because there is a minor discrepancy between these two timings generally. So, moving on. Notice these bunkers are now salvaged, because, well, great, now the armies are... We're no longer in this stage of the game, we've skipped over this stage of the game, we're now here, we can begin to take them and head on, we no longer need those bunkers for defense. Cool. And we have our ghosties up, and a good timing to push is when you have a key piece of tech coming out, or a key upgrade. So what we're going to see is, if we can go to the production tab, Naniwa still not getting Storm, which I find interesting. But we should expect him to get Storm fairly soon. No, not going to bother, he's just going to go with his 3-3 upgrades, was the timing that I wanted to highlight. Which again, now you relate to the fairly sort of typical timings that everyone should know. A good time to push is just after upgrades are done. Ah, okay, there we go. Nani now going into Colossus. Yes, I do remember that. I remember that being interesting. He neglects Storm altogether to get Colossus plus whatchamacallit, plus Archons, rather than getting Storm, forcing his opponent down to Ghosts, and then getting the Colossus out instead. But Artist, not being at all fooled, sees the Robo Bay, I presume, because he's getting Vikings. And so now we're going to see, well, an absolutely bog-standard engagement, and this entire game is just going to come down to... Notice Naniwa stalling until 3-3's done. I really like play like this. So many players would just go in. He's just trying to run Artist around until his 3-3 is done. So he's tactical run the fact away, and using some force fields to make sure, and now he's in a pretty good position. All of this stuff going on. And I feel like I've actually missed the key timing that I wanted to highlight in this game, but maybe I haven't. Yeah, no, I think this was just a general look at what both players are doing from understand. Yeah, okay, I've got this now. I've just looked at my notes, I remember this. What I wanted you to take from this game was how Artist looking at his bunker timings and looking at his building timings and looking at what he's doing, for a game with 0 engagements until the ultra late game, we still understand his entire build in terms of what he was doing then. That initial early bunkers, then those 3 bunkers when a warp gate timing was coming, then selling those bunkers when we know we're safe once we've got the medevacs and the ghosts out, and then just, you know, taking a third, continuing with our upgrades, and the usual sort of thing. But it just serves to highlight the backbone, the structure of this matchup at the moment, at least when Terran's going MMM and Protoss is not doing something too batshit insane, like an Immortal All-In. So, yeah. that was what I wanted to take wanted you to take from the game, and I specifically chose this replay because Artist is going to go on and win this. Big surprise, he wins it fairly soon, and I just wanted to sort of highlight how you don't have to hit a timing push. I know that this topic was suggested to me with somebody saying, well, what sort of timing pushes can I hit? And really that comes to this thing. You can try and put on some early pressure with concussive shells, you can go for a huge all-in when stim finishes if you want, and then you can hit timings with Methysc, because if you have Methysc out and they don't have Colossi or Templar out, well, or Archons I should say, because Archons can be pretty good against it as well, well, that's a scary position. And there are all sorts of weird all-in timings, early ghosts, that sort of thing, which we're not looking at because, again, these fall into the general headings. Yes, you can incorporate ghosts into a stim push, but if you don't have Methysc, you're going for this stage of the game, you're just doing it in a specific way. But I just wanted to do this by showing that with no particular timing push, Artist is going to go in and win this game. So, here we have the battle going on. Here we have the Vikings demolishing, mostly just a terrible engagement from Rami. His angle was fairly shocking, and he's going to lose a lot, an absolute lot. So, there we go. This is an option for this matchup. You can sort of say, well, I don't want to end the game in any sort of early game thing. I suppose I should pause this replay, but it's not too important with this thing. You can sort of say, well, I want to try and get here. So if I want to try and get here, well, this is really the only thing I need to worry about. I can get a bunker to be safe from this. This I need to worry about. Once I've ruled this out, cool, I'm there. And this is something that I'd really, really recommend. You can go for all sorts of stim timing pushes, and I believe the person who sent this request to me, that's what he was looking for. He was looking for a attack at this time and you're guaranteed to win. Maybe not so sort of clumsily phrased, but a sort of, well, there's this wonderful timing push that you can do time and time again here. But I really want to shy away from doing that sort of thing because that really comes down to just learning a build order really well. What we're looking at here is that, well, okay, if I want to go to there, cool, I want to get stim, I want to get 3 racks and I want to get Methysc out, then I want to begin to add on more racks and get some units to deal with whatever his choice of AoE happened to be. And if we do that, we need to worry about this, and that is crucial. And cool, then without exploiting any particular timing attack, we can have a game that is fairly well balanced, and really it comes down to who controls in this final engagement. Sweet. Awesome. Moving on. Because Daniwara is just dead. He holds in for another minute from this point. Just credit to him. I suppose he is floating a huge number of minerals. It comes with being maxed out and then having your army decimated. But yeah, that's going to be that. So, moving back to the camera. I'm going to load up the next replay. So, while it's loading, this will be my default replay loading face. Okay, and here we go. We have Elfie versus Beastie Cutie. I am, well, fairly fond of both of these players. Slightly less fond of Beastie Cutie after he raged against a 6-pool, but whatever. It happens, man. But Elfie, I really, really quite like Elfie. He's got such a just bizarre playstyle. Reminds me a lot of Null Ra from Brood War, although many people will be shocked by me making that brain claim. But basically what I mean is he does some fairly batshit insane things. So, again, we're going to be seeing some fairly standard. I'm going to rush through this because there's nothing too particularly new as far as I recall from this replay. Fairly standard, 1-gate FE, and instead of going for Gasless Expand, Beastie Cutie is going to be getting a Reaper out and doing some scouting with the Reaper, And again, this just sort of fits into our game plan fairly naturally. It sort of takes map control, although it'll die to a stalker, so really it only takes map control because it can run away from the stalker, so it's sort of a passive map control, as you were. But he's just getting that out to make sure that nothing particularly crazy is coming his way, and do some scouting throughout the game. And now, again, we see that we're having this skipping from stim to, let's get rid of all of this extraneous stuff that I added in. Again, we're seeing BSTQT is going, well, I don't particularly want to do anything with concussive shells, so let's go there. And this is a common trend in modern Terran styles. So, now, notice that in sharp contrast to the previous games, he does not have a bunker. Now, why does he not have a bunker? Well, quite simply, he does not have a bunker because his expansion is not at the front of his base, it's at the back of his base, and we can just wall in. The Protoss, the Stalker and the Zealot may be very, 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 very good against Marines and Marauders before Concussive Shell is done, but all of that counts for nothing if they can't get to the Marines and the Marauders. So, that's just a cool thing to note. Essentially, we are accomplishing defending against this little region in a very, very different fashion just by walling in. And that's absolutely something you can do. And generally, either a bunker or walling in are the two used approaches. Walling in with Marauders, I should say, because if you just wall in and don't get a bunker, the Stalker can still just be an absolute pain for your Marines. So, we see a fairly standard play of three racks going up, and it's getting this third command center. Again, Terrans have been doing that a lot lately, but what is different about this matchup is that there's going to be no sort of gateway pressure. We're going to be going for a very, 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 very early Colossus. Again, exploiting the fact that, well, these sentries mean that any sort of stim push is going to be deflected. Note if we flip this around on the Protoss stage, the Protoss were sort of saying, well, I'm not going to go to that, and again I'm just doing this for interest, I realise I'm trying to keep this Terran focused on the Terran, but the Protoss is saying, well, I'm not going to go for that, I want to get to here. So, well, I need to worry about this, really a single sentry will take care of that. The main thing I need to worry about is this. How am I going to deal with a stim push pre-medevac? Well, how I'm going to deal about it is just getting a huge number of sentries up and continuously force fielding this ramp. And cool, we've got our expansion safe here. So this is really a map-specific strategy. You couldn't get away with this sort of thing on most other maps. Maybe on something like Tel'Darim Altar, definitely on Shakura's Plateau you could do it. But it is, again, nice to see how this entire play is integrated into this diagram. He's afraid of a stim timing push. How is he dealing with that? Sentries! And just on a side note to all my Protoss friends, this is something that you see a lot of Protoss players doing on maps that it's not safe to do it on. They sort of 7.5 minutes, so 7 minutes say this robotics bay went down. Very, very, very early robotics bay on Xel'Naga Caverns. And, well, I'm sure you've all experienced stim marauders running into your base and just killing it at that point. This is, you could do it on Shakuras, maybe on Tel'Darim, but for the most part you can't do this at all. You need some sort of other way of dealing with this stimmy thing that is not force fielding a ramp if you don't have a ramp to force field. So, yeah, just worth noting that it's cool to replicate builds, but understand how they work in the context of this sort of thing. So, Elfie doing the smart thing, and BSTQT also doing the smart thing. Now if we just go to his vision, well, again, he knows sort of very, very, very little. So he's throwing it down a bunker. Now, as it turns out, this bunker is absolutely, completely useless, because there's no ways that Elfie is going to be pushing out until he's got at least one Colossus out and range is done. It's just not going to happen. If he tries it, Marauders will destroy his Colossus and he'll be dead. So this bunker isn't necessary. But again, notice how BSTQT doesn't know this. He doesn't know this at all. He has no idea of this. So he still has to address this warp gate thing. Despite the fact that his opponent has chosen not to do it, he still has to address that. I feel I undid one too many things there, so You'll have to forgive me. So how's he going to do that? He's going to throw down a bunker. And now if we just stay in his vision camera, we'll see when he manages to... There we go. Scan goes down. So now if we pause, he's now seen this. And he now knows what's coming. So now he's going to be feeling pretty safe. And he's not going to get any further bunkers. He's not going to worry about anything else. He's just going to be powering up hard, getting 2 starports. Now, why does this make sense? Again, this makes sense because we know that this isn't happening. We don't need to worry about anything from there. We know our Protoss player is going straight to here. So, therefore, if he's getting Colossus, well, we want things to deal with Colossus. So if we have 2 starports, great, we can get the Methysc, which is our section of this, and we can deal with the Colossus, and hopefully get an advantage that way. So, here we go, and again, just look at how you can relate everything he's doing to this timing. Guaranteed, if there were 6 gateways down from Alfie, we would definitely only see 1 starport, we'd possibly see a couple more bunkers, and yeah, he would just be sitting way more defensive. Notice how with this Wallen we can generally sort of get away with 1 bunker because we're very safe against warp gate timing pushes anyway. They can't get surface area on the bunkers, they have to get through this huge wall first. So we don't need that many bunkers. But great, we know what our opponent is doing, we can now skip onto the timing path that we want, which is exactly this there. And, you know, just notice, he's now got a huge number of Vikings out, and I just want to stress this, I want to absolutely stress this, I cannot stress this enough. Interpret this in terms of the timings. Stealing a pro build is all well and good, but you have to understand why they're doing what they're doing. If you just sort of think, well, okay, this is a cool build, I'm just going to go with this, so I'm going to get the 3 racks, and then I'm going to get the bunker, and I'm going to have an expansion up at that point, and then I'm going to go for double starport pumping Vikings. If you do that on, say, a map like Zelnaga when your opponent is going for Templar, you're just dead. You're dead. Completely dead. No hope of coming back. So we can understand everything he's doing in terms of this diagram. We sort of see, okay, he's not going for that sort of thing, great, so I can skip straight to here as well. Terran Protoss is saying, great, he's not going for that sort of thing, I can skip straight to there as well. So many arrows on my diagram now. And everything can be understood in terms of that. It is such a beautiful concept. I didn't have my diagram on at that point. Shame on me. But in any case, we've just sort of said, Protoss has seen, well, okay, I've taken care of this, so I can now go straight to there. I'm not going to do any warp gate timing. Terran has seen, well, okay, I need to take care of this, so I'm going to sort of take care of this, but then I scan, oh, he's not going there, so great, I can go straight to there, and deal with that head-on. So, wonderful. And just note, in general, if you do want a good timing to push, if we put back this little gap here, this, as a general rule, is a great timing. You will win so many games by pushing with this timing. 3 racks, Methysc out, and push with the Methysc. And you'll be surprised how effective it is if the Protoss player has been a bit lax in getting his tech out quick enough. Just something to note, that is a timing you can exploit. And so, yeah, now we've got 4 Vikings coming out at a time, and the Protoss player is still committing to Colossus. He's only just got a Twilight Council out, not even started with the Templar Archives, and we can take our 3rd and now just exploit exactly what we've done to go in and crush him. And if you look, this game does go in for quite a while, but the key timings have already passed. Late game you can't really talk about timing so much because at this stage players can have basically whatever. I mean, we see Psystorm coming up now. So from this point onwards, players have access to every single tech, so you can't really look at it as well, what timing windows do I have, because then it's basically down to your read of your opponent, is all you can do. I am running long, not good, something I promised myself I wouldn't do, so I'm just going to ×8 this, and we'll see fairly standard late gameplay. And the Vikings are just going to crush, and yeah, that was a slaughter. That was an absolute slaughter. And all of it can be how we got to this position can all be understood from this diagram. And this is a diagram you can draw for any matchup. Any matchup. Do them. They're very, very good. Very, very fun. BeastieQT going to crush through. Essentially just having a good read on his opponent. Taking care of everything he needed to take care of. We were safe at all stages, and then we killed our opponent. So I'm going to have to rush through this one, which is another Elfie versus BeastieQT. Because begin thinking about questions, by the way, and in fact begin asking questions, because I want to keep this as close to an hour as I possibly can. Moving on. I wish you could skip. Let me look at my notes for this replay. Okay. Yes, I have an idea of what's happening. I believe that this is just going to be more of the same. This is a fairly extraneous replay, whereas the last one was interesting. Okay, and again, you know, exactly the same sort of thing going on. This bunker to keep safe against exactly this. Notice how Elfie, yeah, okay, that's exactly why I chose this replay. I just wanted to show this moment. This bunker to prevent this, and then the bunker's there so the Stalkers can't engage this, and we're just keeping our Marines here so that the Stalkers don't try to run past the bunker, which could be annoying. Okay, and then moving on and commentating at hyperspeed. Notice how we have more bunkers going up again for these warp gate timings. Warp gate research is just finished, and so we have 2 bunkers going up, because if we look at BeastieQT's vision, he's seen 4 gates and he's seen not much else. There's just a forge going down. So when you see 4 gates instead of 3 gates, well, our opponent is going to be pressuring us. And that's exactly what Elfie was going for. He got those 4 gates up and delayed his expansion, so now we get the early bunkers, because, hey, Protoss is going for something here, so we need to defend against this. How do we defend against this? Well, we get some extra bunkers up, and just a huge number of units. And notice absolutely stand transition from there. 3 racks with a factory. Methysc is going to be coming along the way. Scouting pylons is always good, and well, hey, we've deflected early warp gate pressure. So now Elfie is going to go to the next stage, which is Twilight Council. So now Elfie is saying, great, I want to get to here. Notice how he has lots of sentries. Well, okay, he only has 2 sentries at the moment, but he will have some more sentries. And that's sort of saying, well, cool, I will hold this ramp against any sort of stim timing push. And it all can be made sense of through this diagram. This diagram, the simple hashing hashing together of some basic things that I could think of off the top of my head, can be used to explain why the players are constructing their bases like they are, why they're getting what they're getting, when they're getting it, and why they're pushing out when they're pushing out. And you notice Stim has done, there is no sort of AoE, there is not even charge. Notice that I sort of classify Archons plus charge as sort of getting into this stage of the game. But notice we now have the strong Stim timing coming forward from BeastieQT, so hey, we can control the map, we can push out, we no longer have to fear being at home, we'll salvage our bunkers and we'll try and poke. And that's exactly what he does. And then Methysc come out and he just basically does annoying. That's really an age-old thing that Elfie shouldn't really have fallen for. Feigning a drop at the back and then pushing in the front. It's not the greatest. But in any case, I'm just going to timestate this for the rest of it, because everything makes sense. Now, well, hey, look, our opponent has gone Templar Tech, we scan this, therefore we go Ghost Tech, rather than getting Vikings. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And this matchup just makes sense. It, like, once you understand this, you know what sort of the general form is. And now, if you're a Terran player, you can say, well, hey, if the Protoss gets more than 3 gates early, he's probably going to be going for some sort of pressure. He's going to be going for some sort of warp gate pressure, so I need to defend against that. If he doesn't, great, he's skipping to the next stage. And, you know, for a Protoss player, if our Terran player gets 4 racks up, he's probably going to be going for a stim timing push. If he gets 3 racks and Methysc, he's probably not. It's still an option, but we can then defend that with sentries. We don't need to worry about something else. So perfect. Great. And moving on. I believe Beastie QT wins this again, but I'm not entirely sure. That early push of his did some fairly cool damage, so 30 supply ahead. It's not bad. And the base up at this point, and yeah, only one storm goes off. And Elfie gets demolished. Cool. So, I will pretty much end it there. Questions really quickly. Anyone have any questions? I'll look at the chats. No one seems to have said anything for a while, but that's cool. I'm okay with that. Nope, no questions. No questions at all. Cool then. Thanks guys. Thanks for watching. I just want to say next week Monday, 7:30 GMT, so that's 8:30 Central European time, which is whatever time in your local time zone. And I'm going to be doing Zergs. How do they macro? How do they macro? Which I'm going to be keeping with this general theme of one Zerg, one Protoss, one Terran, if at all possible. Again, it depends on the requests. Keep sending requests to methysc@gmail.com, and I can keep doing this, hopefully, because I enjoy this oh so very much. And so yeah, Zergs, how do they macro? And I'm going to be looking at it sort of in the context with, it's fairly easy to understand how to analyze a Protoss and a Terran replay. You can see if they've made mistakes like not producing probes for a significant period of time and just having loads of gateways sitting idle and just having huge amounts of money. Whereas Zerg, it's difficult because there are times when we want our money to be high. Say we're about to build 10 Methyscs, and, well, we can't keep up constant worker production because of the lava mechanic, and, well, lava is another resource we need to worry about. So I'm just going to be looking at how do I analyze a replay as Zerg, essentially, and how do I analyze my macro as Zerg? How do I tell if I'm macroing well? Swindles is saying, really good episode, shame it doesn't apply to the lower level of play. It absolutely does apply to the lower level of play. It absolutely does. This is exactly the point. This applies at all levels of play. This diagram applies at all levels of play. And, okay, the timings will be off. The timings will absolutely be off. But you can really, if we just go to the diagram, you can really understand absolutely everything. If you're a Bronze League player, and say you're a Terran player, and you see him sticking on one base, say, and you scan his base and there's no robo facility, well, it probably means he's doing this. So we need to defend against some sort of warp gate timing. If you do see a robo, well then he's trying to get to there. But you will find that in the lower leagues, there are just bigger gaps. The timings are not perfect, so people leave themselves vulnerable. And in fact, you can use this more, because you can absolutely exploit this more. You can say that, well, just like we saw with those sentries, if a Protoss player doesn't have a large number of sentries out at this stage, and he's trying to get to Colossus, he's vulnerable to the stim timing. He's absolutely vulnerable to the stim timing. Cool, let's hit him with the stim timing. As a Protoss player, you can say, well, okay, if say, Terran player is getting stim early but is not going for medevacs, he's trying to hit me at this timing. So if I just defend against this timing and then get my Colossus out, I'm going to have a huge advantage at this stage of the game because I'm going to have Colossus, he's not going to have medevacs. Brilliant. And you could understand the entire matchup in terms of this. You could absolutely do it. You can begin thinking about, well, okay, as a Protoss player, this is why I was so scary when that first Marauder comes steaming up my ramp. This is why I've lost that game so many times. Because of this. Well, if I don't scout an early tech lab, he can't be going for this, so I don't need to worry about it. If I do scout it, well then, how am I going to deal with that? Cool, let's get an early sentry, and let's just make sure we force field our ramp and keep those early Marauders out of my base. And you can make sense of the entire matchup just in terms of this diagram. Yes, the timings will be different, but if you understand this diagram, if you really understand it and what it says, you will find that you will hit so many more timings. You will be able to win the games just through the understanding of the matchup. You'll see, hey, I have medevacs, and he has no form of AoE. He just has gateway units, and I have Methysc out. Cool. He is here, and I am here. I'm going to go kill him. And you can do that, and you'll find that it works. And you can just all these sorts of concepts you can begin playing in. Protoss on the other on the flip side. If you have Colossus out with range and you've got a decent gateway army with it, and he doesn't have Methysc, try pushing him. See how much he struggles to deal with it. The Colossus just deals so much damage, and without the Methysc there to heal up the units, they generally get worn down very quickly. A good MMM army in a good position doesn't actually need Vikings to deal with Colossi. Okay, yes, if he has sort of 8-9 Colossi out, you're going to need some Vikings at some point. But it's the Methysc that really sort of put the balance back into the thing, particularly because you can do these sorts of fancy drops and that sort of thing, which keeps the Colossus in his base trying to defend. If he moves out with Colossus, drop in the back of his main and watch those Colossus run the fact back to the main. I should swear less. Not good for a show. So what I really want you to understand, this may feel like this doesn't apply to the lower levels of play, but it does. It absolutely does. It's less apparent what's going on at the lower levels of play. But if you can sort of peer through the murky mists of inconsistent timings, you will pull a lot of wins just by having a better understanding of the matchup. You can then begin to say the sorts of things like, great, his Colossus is late, I can go and kill him now. Or, great, Stim hasn't finished yet, I can go and kill him now. Or, great, he doesn't have Warp Gate, what's he doing? I can go and kill him. And just analyze your own replays in this context, and you'll be surprised at how much it applies. You can even say, well, if I scan at this time, and I see this and this and this, I know that he has this and this and this attributes, and I can go and kill him. And I'm deliberately phrasing it in generic terms, because it applies to all matchups. If you can construct this diagram, and if you can understand this diagram, then you can apply it. And you will, without having good macro or without having good micro, be able to turn some wins from games that were otherwise losses just by having a good understanding. Obviously, macro is what you want to be focusing on, though, because any problem can be overcome with sufficiently good macro, to be quite honest. Until you're in Grandmaster, you need to improve your macro. So, if that's so, that's all. Chronobust, as in chronoing out lots of units really early and pushing with them. Is that what you mean by chronobust? There is a sort of thing where, I believe that's what you're referring to, where you use 2 chronoboosts on your gateway early to get 1 zealot and 2 stalkers out really early. Then, oh, okay. Oh, right, I see. Okay, as a topic for a show. Yeah, sure, I can do that. I won't do that now because I can do an hour on that. But the next Protoss-themed one, which will be sometime soon, I can definitely do that. I can't work out when it is. But if that's all, guys, thank you for watching. The VOD will be up shortly. And, yeah, keep sending in requests. I can absolutely talk about Chronoboost for an hour. I can talk about Chronoboost for an hour quite easily. There is severely haphazard spending of Chronoboosts in the well, even high masters. People just sort of Chronoboost stuff because the Chronoboost is there and might as well use it without really thinking about what they want to be spending it on. And in fact, that early sort of 2 Chronoboosts on the gateways to get 1 zealot and 2 stalkers out in any matchup is surprisingly effective. It's surprising how unbelievably unprepared all 3 races are to deal with a really early 1 zealot and 2 stalkers. Try it if you don't believe me. It's interesting. Cool. See you guys.